Okay, let's dive right into this explainer with a pretty mind-blowing mathematical reality. What actually happens if you commit to getting just 1% better each day? Well, back in 2003, British cycling was famously terribly bad. I mean, they were struggling. That is, until a new performance director named Dave Brailsford came in with this crazy strategy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. Basically, they hunted for literally 1% improvements in every single thing they did. We're talking the aerodynamics of the bike seats, the exact type of massage gel the riders used, tiny stuff. And honestly, it doesn't sound like much, does it? A 1% change is barely noticeable. Sometimes you can't even measure it in the moment. But because of the massive power of compounding, improving your habits by just 1% every single day leads to a staggering 37 times improvement over a single year. You literally end up almost 40 times better by the time you're done. Now, conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for a year, your skills and progress decline nearly down to zero. So what starts as this seemingly insignificant tiny win or a totally minor setback, it accumulates into something absolutely massive. Welcome to this explainer on atomic habits, covering the neuroscience and psychology of behavior change. Today we're unpacking James Clear's groundbreaking research to uncover the psychology behind this compounding effect, and we'll see why the real secret to success isn't about making massive, painful overhauls to your life, but rather fixing the flawed processes we've all been using this whole time. So when we hear the word atomic, we usually just think of something minuscule, right? A tiny speck. But an atomic habit is far more than just small. It's a fundamental element of a much larger system. Just like atoms are the fundamental building blocks of molecules, atomic habits are the foundational building blocks of truly remarkable results. They're these little regular practices or routines that are incredibly easy to do, but they serve as the ultimate source of power for your own intentional growth. Now, here's a pretty wild paradox that we really need to wrap our heads around. Winners and losers often have the exact same goals. Think about it for a second. Every single Olympian stepping up to the starting line wants the gold medal. Every job candidate in the waiting room wants the position. So if the highly successful and the totally unsuccessful people share the exact same goals, the goal itself simply cannot be the thing that sets them apart, right? It turns out it's actually the underlying system of daily habits, that continuous process of tiny improvements we just talked about, that truly dictates who succeeds. As Claire puts it, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And that idea takes us to the deepest possible level of human behavioral change. You see, most of us start out by focusing on outcomes. We focus on what we want to achieve. We say things like, I want to run a marathon, or I want to lose 20 pounds. But to truly transform, you actually have to stop focusing exclusively on the outcome and start building what are called identity-based habits. You basically need to shift your core self-image. So instead of saying, I want to run, the critical shift is saying, I am a runner. When your habits become a real source of personal pride and a core part of your identity, you're just way more motivated to maintain them. You aren't forcing a behavior anymore, you're just acting in alignment with who you genuinely believe you are. Let's actually look at how this builds biologically in your head. We can chronologically walk right through the brain's habit loop, which operates in four distinct repeating stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. First up, the cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. It's basically a little bit of information that predicts a reward. Second is the craving, which is the actual motivational force behind every single habit. Honestly, you don't crave smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of relief that it supposedly provides. Third is the response. That's the actual habit you perform. And finally, the reward. Rewards satisfy our cravings, and they basically teach our brains which actions are worth remembering for next time. So to totally hack this biological loop, Clear developed what he calls the 4 laws of behavioral change. You can think of these 4 laws as your ultimate diagnostic tool and blueprint for completely redesigning your daily life. If a habit just isn't sticking for you, you can use this to diagnose exactly which of these 4 laws is failing. To successfully build a good habit, you absolutely need to make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. All right, tackling law number 1, make it obvious. To do this, we have to aggressively address the cues hiding in our environment. And one of the single most effective ways to do this is by using a psychological trick called implementation intentions. So instead of vaguely saying, I'll exercise more this week, you firmly state the exact time and location a new behavior is going to happen. You say, I will exercise for 30 minutes at 6 a.m. at the local gym. By making the cue highly obvious and super specific, you completely remove the need to make a decision in the moment. The plan is already made. But what if you want to uproot a bad habit? Well, you simply apply the inversion tactic. You just flip that first law totally on its head. Instead of making it obvious, you make it invisible. If you find yourself wasting way too much time scrolling on your phone, leave it in another room. If you eat too much junk food, literally don't keep it in your house. Breaking a bad habit is a notoriously tough ask, and the research shows that the absolute best way to do it is to severely limit your exposure to the cues that trigger it in the first place. Make the trigger completely invisible in your daily environment. Moving on to Law 2, make it attractive. Listen, we constantly overestimate the power of sheer willpower. The reality is, our physical environment and the social norms around us shape our behavior way more effectively than isolated bursts of motivation. This actually ties really heavily into social learning theory. As humans, we are naturally drawn to habits that earn us praise, inclusion, or acceptance from the pack. So if you want to build a new habit, the cheat code is to join a culture where your desired behavior is just the normal behavior. Aligning yourself with positive social norms makes the craving for that habit incredibly attractive. And if you want to break a toxic routine, again, we invert the second law. Make it unattractive. You consciously have to reframe what you think the habit gives you. For instance, instead of viewing saving money as this massive, painful sacrifice, reframe it as buying future freedom. You need to highlight the negative consequences of your bad habits to make the craving deeply unattractive in your own mind. It's really all about shifting your mindset so you associate your bad behaviors with pain and your good behaviors with pleasure. Okay, when it comes to Law 3, make it easy. It literally boils down to the philosophy of least effort. Look, human beings are naturally wired to be a bit lazy and conserve energy. Therefore, to build good systems, you absolutely must decrease the friction. Redesign your environment so the good habit requires the fewest possible steps. Want to run in the morning? Lay out your workout clothes right next to your bed the night before. But to break a bad habit, you do the exact opposite. Increase the friction. Add immense friction and multiple annoying steps to demand way more effort. If you want to watch less TV, unplug the TV and take the batteries out of the remote every single time you turn it off. And that philosophy of least effort leads us perfectly into a total game changer, the 2-minute rule. The rule states that when you're starting a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. So read before bed simply becomes read 1 page, or do 30 minutes of yoga becomes just take out my yoga mat. The entire idea here is to make starting the action so ridiculously easy that you can't possibly say no to it. Taking even the smallest 2-minute action is infinitely more valuable than sitting there, totally paralyzed by the idealism of perfection. Remember, you have to actually standardize a habit before you can optimize it. Finally, we reach Law 4, which tackles the reward phase. Make it satisfying. We are just biologically more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience feels deeply satisfying. The real trick here is to devise immediate rewards for your good habits, largely because our ancient brains prioritize instant gratification way over delayed long-term payoffs. On the flip side, you need to ensure your bad habits carry an immediate, really unsatisfying cost. If a bad habit is instantly painful or costly, like having a strict accountability partner you owe $20 to every single time you slip up, you are drastically less likely to repeat it. So how do we seamlessly weave all these laws together into an actionable daily plan? Well, you can use a brilliant little technique called habit stacking. Here's how it works. You identify a pre-established daily habit that you already do without even thinking about it, like, say, brewing your morning coffee. Then you literally stack your brand new behavior directly onto it. For example, after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will immediately meditate for 1 minute. That existing rock-solid habit acts as the absolute perfect automatic cue to trigger the new one. But a quick reality check here, managing your expectations is absolutely crucial. Research from Philippa Lally over at University College London proves that habits are a whole lot like growing trees. They do not just spring up overnight. Her research found that it takes an average of 66 days for a completely new habit to become automatic, with a fairly wide range of anywhere from 18 to over 250 days, depending on the specific behavior and the person doing it. Just like a tree forming deep, complex roots, immense patience is required here. You literally cannot give up just because you don't see massive, life-altering results in those first few weeks. To bring it all together, consistently applying this entire matrix to your daily life is the master key. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying for the good stuff, and make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying for the bad stuff. This diagnostic framework is exactly how you compound those tiny 1% improvements into a completely transformed identity over the course of a year. It's really not about radical overnight overhauls that burn you out. It's just about engineering your environment and your cues to make your success the ultimate path of least resistance. I'm going to leave you with this final, really provocative thought to carry with you today.
Will you continue to just let invisible scripts, cultural norms, and accidental environments completely dictate your daily habits? Or will you actively step up, apply these 4 laws, and actually design your own reality? Because you have the ultimate operating manual now. The power of atomic habits is literally right there in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly, highly encourage you, go start your very first 2-minute habit today.